Host the ultimate backyard barbecue with Whole Foods Market. It's the hot grill summer event through July 16th with sizzling sales on no antibiotics ever boneless beef ribeye steak and beef New York strip steak. Plus, check out sales on sustainable wild-caught Alaska sockeye salmon, organic strawberries, and more. In a hurry? Choose grab-and-go favorites like picnic salads and sushi, plus plenty of cooler-friendly beverages. Make it a hot grill summer at Whole Foods Market.
In 2011, director Rupert Wyatt and star James Franco gave the world a tense setup film that had the world going ape.
In 2024, we return to a new favorite at a higher proof.
The film is Rise of the Planet of the Apes.
The whiskey is Green River Full Proof Bourbon.
And we'll review them both. This is the Film and Whiskey Podcast.
Welcome to the Film and Whiskey Podcast, where each week we review a classic movie and a glass of whiskey. I'm Bob Book.
I am Brad of the G's of the G's.
There's a lot of thes happening in this title.
I was going to say, how many movies have you watched where there's two of thes in the title?
All the Lord of the Rings. Let's see.
Ooh, look at you go.
Yeah, I don't know. There's a lot. But yes, in any case, it's a long title, Brad. And here we are in the back, third of our season now, in season 8. And we could not settle on a movie to talk about today for 2011. And so we hit the airwaves, we hit the socials, we asked all the people.
And this was about, to be clear, this is because there was so many
great
10 out of 10 films to choose from.
So I think we took the top 10 or top 12 grossers from this year and put them in a list and said, all right, people, pick what you want us to talk about. And pretty quickly, there were 3 that rose to the top. It was Rise of the Planet of the Apes. It was Fast 5 of the Fast and Furious fame. And
then my personal favorite, what I wish we had chosen, The Twilight Saga, Breaking Dawn, Part 1. So
we had an interesting split, and this was actually a really, really close vote. I think Apes was benefited both by me saying oh, that was a good movie on Discord, and then I think everyone kind of fell in line. I was the Caesar of this vote.
You finally used your voice, Bob.
Everyone was giving me a supplicating gesture, you know? So I think that this was benefited by the fact that we just had a Planet of the Apes movie come out a month and a half ago. And so I think people are kind of revisiting these. They put all of them on Hulu, all 9 of them, I think, or however many there have been, are on Hulu now. So this got a bump. Fast and Furious got an interesting cross-section of people because Fast 5 is considered the best one in the whole franchise, but it's also still the Fast and the Furious, so people wanted to be goofy and let us watch that. And then there was the chaos vote of just, I want to hear Bob and Brad suffer through Twilight. Yep. I will say, I am not opposed to episodes like that. We've had movies where we both just truly hated the experience. I'm glad that one didn't win. I'd rather watch something that we both like. And
I was going to say, you've been anti-sequels, second for this season. I think this was the 4th movie in the series. How would you have felt about that, Bob?
Wait, you think, what was the 4th movie? Oh, the Twilight one?
Yeah.
Oh, gosh, I would have felt awful because, Brad, I have not seen any Twilight movies. It would have been kind of fun to jump into whatever it was,
Bob,
the 3rd or 4th one.
You're missing a cinematic
I'm missing
masterpiece.
Nothing, dude.
So some friends and I, when we were in grad school, decided to watch through all of them, and we drank a lot of alcohol. Mm-hmm. And that's the end of the story. It was a lot of fun.
There you go.
Good time.
That's kind of what we do here on the Film and Whiskey Podcast. So it would have fallen
that's about it.
Right in line. But no, we settled on Rise of the Planet of the Apes. I'm glad we did, Brad, because to my knowledge, this was the first time you've seen this, right?
No, this is my 3rd time seeing this movie.
Really? I could have sworn
Bob.
up and down that you had absolutely no exposure to any Planet of the Apes IP prior to this.
No, Bob, come on. I have seen the original Planet of the Apes.
Oh, good. Okay. Man, we're off on such good footing here.
Bob, when Charlton Heston falls to his knees and the camera shows the Statue of Liberty.
Yep.
That might be like a top
Oh, it's a great twist
10
ending.
shot
First of all, let's not get too far into that spoiler because it's necessary to know where we're going today, but it's also like it's one of the great twist endings of all time. And
the
it's
spoiler of the 60-plus-year-old movie.
Well, I mean, it's like if they made a franchise out of The Sixth Sense and then took a 20-year break, and then they were like, all right, now we're doing the prequel to The Sixth Sense, and you still have to know what happens. But man, I hate having to spoil one of the great twists ever just to give context for this movie.
Yeah, that's true.
All right, so you saw that one. Have you seen the crappy Mark Wahlberg one that Tim Burton did?
I have not seen the crappy Mark Wahlberg.
Oh, I saw that bad boy in theaters.
Did you?
Oh, man, it's awful. However, the prosthetic makeup is truly incredible, but you still can't talk under that much makeup. So the actors are really straining. The way that movie ends, Brad, if we're going to get into spoilers here, let's just do this. Spoiler warning for all the Planet of the Apes movies. In the original 1967-68 movie with Charlton Heston, it is set in the kind of distant future. 2 astronauts crash land on a strange planet where there are just a bunch of talking apes everywhere. Apes are the dominant species, and humans are treated as pets and slaves by the apes. And at the end of the film, what you find is that he crash landed on Earth all along, and that something had happened while he was in space. And oh man, bad things.
Dude, what's the line?
Oh, he says, well, first you get the "get your stinking paws off me, you damn dirty ape." But then at the end, it's just him rolling around in the sand going, "God damn you all to hell."
Yeah.
Repeatedly. It's great.
It's like the best sci-fi, like, oh, we did this to ourselves.
Yeah.
Like, it is peak 60s, man.
Oh, it's great. So anyway, in the crappy 2000 remake by Tim Burton, that actually has a great ending where Mark Wahlberg figures out that he's on Earth because he escapes from all the apes, and he's in Washington, D.C., where he gets like surrounded by a bunch of apes and ape police cars and stuff. And he looks up, he's on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, and he looks up and it has an ape's face on it. It's freaking great, dude. It's wonderful. It's the only good part of that whole movie.
Abraham Lincoln?
Abraham Lincoln, baby.
Does he have the top hat and everything?
Mm-mm.
Okay.
No, he's just sitting there, just chilling. I think he's a gorilla, actually. I don't even know if he's an ape, but yeah.
I need to watch this now, Bob.
Oh, it's so good. Okay, so then 11 years later, they kind of reboot the franchise with this movie, which is a prequel to the original. And it's not even like a direct prequel. So it's an entire trilogy about this ape Caesar and how he sets in motion what will eventually come to be the Charlton Heston thing. So right now, what we're experiencing in 24, there's a new movie that just came out this year that is like the second set of 3 movies. And I have heard tell that the studio has greenlit 9 movies in total to get us back to the Charlton Heston days. So we've still got quite a few movies ahead of us, Brad.
Man.
What's really great, though, is all 3 of these movies from the 2010s are really good. And like the worst of them may be this one. And this is still, if nothing else, a really solid first entry in a trilogy. And I think that's what's so great about these movies. No one puts them up on a pedestal of like, you belong with The Godfather, you belong with, The Lord of the Rings, but it's a freaking phenomenal trilogy.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of where I landed with Rise of the Planet of the Apes, was like, this feels like a product of the bygone era where you get just really incredible, fun action movies that don't cost $500 million to make. Mm-hmm. And I would kill to have a Rise of the Planet of the Apes type film come out at least 2 or 3 times a year nowadays. And I just don't feel like we get them as often.
No, you have to wait till the next Planet of the Apes movie comes out to get it.
Apparently. Yeah. Did that just come out, or is it coming out soon?
No, it came out last month. It's good. It's very good. It's a little bit too long. And that's what this movie has in its favor, is it is like a brisk hour and 40 minutes before the credits hit. But yeah, Brad, let's get into talking about the movie itself, which you have now apparently seen 3 times. I'm shocker of all shockers. And I think in order to talk about it, we have to get to our first segment of the day, which we call Brad Explains.
Brad's gonna give us the movie plot with only 60 seconds ticking on the clock. So let's go ahead and hear your take with this little segment that we call Brad Explains.
Brad Explains is the part of the podcast where Brad breaks down the plot of the movie that he has just seen, often for the first time. Brad, we've already spoiled the big spoiler of the Apes franchise, and so really what happens in this movie is nothing compared to that. But again, folks, if you've not seen Rise of the Planet of the Apes, you can press pause here, go watch the film, and come back and join us afterwards. Brad, you get 1 minute to break down the plot of the movie, and go.
Rise of the Planet of the Apes is a film about a young chemist who is on the verge of a breakthrough in neurogenerative science, where he is essentially causing apes to become smarter and smarter, hoping to cure Alzheimer's, which, coincidence, his father has. He makes such incredible advances that the apes go way beyond his control. His program is shut down when accidents ensue, but he is left with the child of one of the apes. This child becomes incredibly smart and prodigious and convinces the board to keep medical testing, to continue the trials. Eventually it gets way out of hand. The apes get really smart. It is lethal to human ingestion, and a pandemic starts, and the apes escape, and they start their own society.
Boom. It's their planet now, baby.
Yeah, that's a weird movie to recap, Bob.
What really impresses me is when you sit down and think about all of the plot points that they hit. Do they gloss over some things? Do some things seem a little bit too accelerated? Yes. But I'm really impressed, that they kept it under 2 hours and 20 minutes, because if you just listed all these things, you'd think this was a long movie. They really do a great job establishing the world that Caesar lives in, and then finding both a credible backstory for how the apes got smart and for Caesar's own journey to kind of independence and autonomy. It's a really great setup movie. It does, we're going to keep comparing this, I think, to things like Lord of the Rings because of the trilogy aspect of it. But everything Fellowship does kind of narratively and in terms of adding juice to the franchise, this thing does the same thing, and it does it in sub 2 hours. I'm really impressed with this script, man.
Yeah, it keeps everything moving along. It never gets bogged down in any one area. And I love how it explores the kind of the three different narrative thrusts of the movie, like what's going on at Genesis, what's going on with Caesar and Will, and then eventually Will and Caesar kind of split off into their own little lanes, if you will. Mm-hmm. And I love that they keep kind of moving back and forth between the three storylines, and you never feel like you're stuck in any one area.
Mm-hmm. So, Brad, I think, when I was watching this movie, I kind of had to stop at the halfway point. And this movie, for having multiple storylines, I think it is a really good movie of two halves. And so I think what might be a really interesting way to talk about it today is to just split our episode into the two halves of the movie, because the first half is basically a domestic drama that also features an ape.
Yes.
And the second half is the rise of a leader of men, or apes, I guess, in Caesar. and I didn't intend to do it this way, but I kind of paused it right at that moment where Caesar makes that turn. I did it right after he rolled the things of the canisters of gas down the hallway and unleashed all the apes.
What a great shot.
But I think probably a little bit before that, when Caesar turns down Will's offer to go home with him, is the turning point of the movie. So let's talk about everything that happens before then. And in order to do that, I want to talk about the opening few minutes of this movie, because this thing moves like freaking gangbusters. Within the first 5 minutes of the movie, you have a scene of these apes getting chased through the jungle and captured. Then it immediately jumps into James Franco working at basically Jurassic Park, engineering these apes. And it's all right, get your pitch deck together for the investors. And they walk us through all the science behind it. We're curing Alzheimer's. You find out that his dad has Alzheimer's in the next 5 minutes, and then like we're off to the races. And it takes its time to catch its breath, but it doesn't waste time in getting the plot established. Like by the 10-minute mark of this movie, you understand everyone's stake in everything that's happening, and we can then develop the characters after that. And I thought that that was a really smart way to get the viewer hooked early.
Yeah, I don't know, Bob. I think that his friend who's like helping him make the pitch deck, is it David?
Oh, David Oyelowo. Yeah.
Yes. I think we probably could have used a little 10-minute extra scene exploring his background and backstory. It really would have done me good.
Why does he love money so much? Yes.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that the key thing about this film is that it knows what people are there to watch. And people are not there to watch Will fall in love with this, veterinarian at the zoo. And so they show him putting the moves on her, and then it's 3 years later, and they're dating. It's stuff like that I love about this movie, because it's indicative of the fact that the director, the writers have something that they are moving you towards. And they do it in a way that feels satisfactory. Like, oh yeah, it makes sense that Will is a young, attractive scientist. He would get himself a girlfriend. Enter girlfriend. That's not the main part of the story, but she's a great supporting character. And so you get to focus then on the meat of the movie, which is watching Caesar develop into a leader of apes, as you put it earlier. And like that is the entire impetus of this film. It's the idea of autonomy, who am I, and do I actually have control over my life? It's personhood. Like, what does it mean to be a person? Like, there's all sorts of questions going on here, and they get explored throughout the film.
Well, and I think that time jump is so well placed too, because it's like, you know everything you need to know. Let's move forward in a point in time where Caesar actually can physically overpower people. They have that great cut where now he's swinging through the trees and you see him like go through all the seasons. And when they finally land on him 5 years later, like his body has filled out, and Andy Serkis doing the motion capture performance is once again just so freaking brilliant in this movie. But the way that he plays like the teenagerdom of Caesar, where he swings down and he's like annoyed with them that they're making out, and he's starting to get, he's pushing boundaries. He's testing the waters a little bit. He lashes out at that couple's dog on the way back to the car. And it really sets you up for, okay, Caesar's going to start pushing back, but it also makes his journey into becoming the leader of all the apes that much more believable, because he's arriving into adulthood at the same time. So I don't know. It's just little things like that. They're kind of obvious, like things that you should put in the script. But the fact that I don't think we should take for granted that they did it, because it enhances and enriches the movie too.
Well, and at this point, we have to talk about Andy Serkis, because
yeah, for sure.
Like, the reason this movie works and is believable is because Andy Serkis is a magician, and like everything he touches in this movie, at least, and seemingly in every other movie, turns to gold. Like, it doesn't surprise me at all. And yet at the same time, I just look at it and go, this dude played Gollum and Caesar. Like, these vastly different characters as far as their physicality goes, and yet he brings so much life to the characters. I think his performance is beyond words here.
Well, I'm pretty sure he also did the motion capture for Peter Jackson's King Kong back in 2005. He played like a real human in that movie too, but I'm pretty sure he was Kong. And you would think that you'd be like, oh yeah, of course, like he's the monkey guy. He can totally play Caesar. But but I think that it once again showcases his versatility, that he can play a gorilla, like a gigantic gorilla, and also play this believable chimpanzee. Like he embodies these characters so much that, back in 2011, this movie's CGI seemed like cutting edge, because there are still moments where not much else is happening in the shot and they can really hone in on the detail of Caesar's face, that it's like, holy crap, this is photorealistic. Now, there's also scenes where it's like, oh, this looks like a PS2 cutscene. You know, like it's a little, especially at the end of the movie. I feel like they just ran out of CGI budget. But despite all that, what keeps you engaged, even as your brain is telling you this looks a little bit chintzy by today's standards, is that you have this believable, heartfelt performance driving the whole thing.
Exactly. Yeah, and opposite of that, you have James Franco, which I think we were talking earlier, Bob, is your favorite actor of all time.
It was just the way you said it. It was like, yeah, heartfelt, and then you have James Franco. Stark difference. James Franco is such an interesting actor because he is an Oscar-nominated actor who is darn good in the movie he was nominated for, 127 Hours. And then you have him in movies like this and like the latter couple Spider-Man films, where my guy is just all the way checked out, really wants that paycheck, and will provide no facial expression to earn that check. I'm interested to hear what you think, Brad, because this is one of those movies where I'm like, oh, I don't really think James Franco is a very good actor. And then they find kind of clever ways to cover for that as the film goes along, so that the final scene you get with Caesar and James Franco at the end of the film is, I think, pretty good. Like it's soft, it's underplayed, but then you have him in the whole first half of the movie where it sounds like he's trying to yell to someone in the other room every time he's talking. He just seems like really amped all the time. And I don't really understand what he's doing.
I mean, dude, his dad has Alzheimer's. He's got to get his point across.
He sure does.
I like James Franco in this movie. I think this is an example of getting like a B- actor, where having, man, I'm trying to think 2011, who would have been a better fit for this at that time.
Give me Ruffalo. Throw Ruffalo in this.
Really?
Or Gyllenhaal. Younger Gyllenhaal would be great in this.
I would say younger Gyllenhaal. What about Jeremy Renner?
Sure. Jeremy Renner's always going to be like sure. He's fine, you know?
I want to see Leo in this role. I think that would just be wildly ridiculous.
I don't want to see Leo in this movie.
That's the thing, though, is that I feel like if you get a solid A actor in this role, I think that this movie like jumps up to become like close to a classic.
I kind of disagree. I think the whole thing falls apart because while the script does a really good job structurally of establishing what it needs to establish to get you to the end of the movie, the human characters in this movie are just not real. Like beyond the first couple scenes where I feel like they do a good job, you know, showing you the relationship between Franco and John Lithgow. There's a great shot when he's first playing the piano and he goes in and you get the reveal that his dad has Alzheimer's because he says, like, didn't you have a big math test today? And they cut to a shot. It's so good. They cut to a shot framing both of them underneath all of James Franco's diplomas.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, okay, you did a good job there. But then every subsequent conversation between two human beings is like, did you bring the plot device? Yes, I brought the plot device. We have to get the plot device over here. And then they just go do that. And I think if you have Leo doing that, it reveals too much of like how the scaffolding on the script is not very sturdy.
Yeah. I mean, I guess on a certain level, the whole point of the movie is that the apes are a more relatable character than the humans in this movie.
Yeah.
And like the humans are supposed to be like a reflection on ourselves of like, why do we suck so much? And so like, yeah, maybe it actually makes sense that, you know, most of the human actors in this film are a little bit
bland.
Yeah.
Can I just say, how good is John Lithgow? Like,
dude,
one of our most underrated character actors.
I was about to say, like, please exempt him from the statement I just made, because he's so good in this. Like, when he's succumbing to the Alzheimer's again and he's driving the car back and forth, which was a scene that I didn't quite remember. I was like, man, I remembered him getting yelled at. I was like, you're going to yell at a guy for just sitting in your car? And then he starts slamming it forward and backwards. I'm like, Oh yeah, I'd probably be pretty pissed about that too.
Dude, go ahead.
But when he looks up and yells, "Caesar, no!" Like, I can't explain it. It's just such a beautiful moment, and there's so much raw fear and like knowledge of what's going to happen to Caesar in John Lithgow's voice. Ugh.
Yeah, he's really great at playing. I don't even know what the word is, but it's just like so cracked open, vulnerable that you just want to protect him at all costs. And like, you know, he makes a brief appearance on How I Met Your Mother in like one of the seasons as Barney's dad who left.
Yes.
And like, he's in, 3 or 4 episodes maybe. And it's a paycheck role. Like that guy doesn't even remember being on How I Met Your Mother, but like, he is so good
because he has Alzheimer's.
He is so good at, I'm going to show up. I'm going to make you think I'm a guy who wants to make amends, and you're going to love me by the end of it. And it's kind of the same
Bob,
thing here.
Is he the American Bill Nighy?
Oh, I would say that he's like the spiritual successor to what we lost in Robin Williams, but like,
yeah,
he might be the American. If this was a British movie starring Simon Pegg,
yes,
it would be Bill Nighy.
Exactly. I'm Shaun of the Dead.
Exactly. Yeah, man. I he's really, really good, and it makes the Caesar character more believable. I will say one of the things I loved so much about the first half of this movie is how absolutely cruel this movie is to that pilot character that lives next door.
I mean, through the entire film,
it's like it's funny, and it's meant to be funny within scenes that are not funny at all. Like the guy's just ramming his car repeatedly, and he's just on his lawn, like crying, like no. And then he understandably drags John Lithgow out of his car. First of all, Lithgow and Franco, terrible neighbors. Like nobody in their neighborhood knows that the old man has Alzheimer's, and B, they're housing a chimp for years. Nobody's aware of this. So yeah, the guy pulls him out, and then Caesar's like, now's my time, baby. I'm eating fingers today. And he just freaking annihilates this man's finger. I couldn't believe this same guy. It was like Jurassic World, where the babysitter gets like tossed around by pterodactyls and then thrown into the mouth of like the big fish. Unbelievable how cruel this movie is.
Yeah, I cannot tell you how important it was to me that we talk about the neighbor, because if like they play him as a bad guy.
Yes.
But if you look at it from his point of view, there's an ape in his backyard, a like man-sized ape with his children in the backyard. I would be pissed too. There's an old man that he obviously doesn't know, ramming his car back and forth in between other cars. I'd also be pissed. And then there's a random scientist that coughs blood up on his face.
Yeah, they're like, this is not enough. He also needs to be patient zero. Like,
yeah.
The only thing we didn't see is like the disease ravaging his body and limbs falling off and stuff. But I'm sure it happened. They gave the man Ebola.
I'm sure that's on the cutting room floor somewhere. They actually filmed him like shivering in a corner, like just pooping himself. Because the neighbor could not be treated more poorly in this movie, and I loved it, every moment of it.
All right, before we go to break, a couple more things. So after Caesar bites fingers, he gets sent to live at this quote-unquote ape sanctuary, which is not remotely close to a sanctuary. It is an ape Shawshank. And
Ape Shawshank.
And we have to talk about
Draco Malfoy.
Yes, we have to talk about Draco Malfoy. Brian Cox shows up to collect a paycheck, veteran character actor, but mostly it's Tom Felton playing. Oh man, I had his character name pulled up here. It is the most. We're gonna create an American out of this Brit. His name is Dodge Landon.
Yeah, Dodge Landon, baby.
And Tom Felton still can't do an American accent because they give him the iconic line, "Get your stinking paw off me, you damn dirty ape." And he still can't pronounce paw like an American. He says par. Like
here's
like
the question though, Bob. At the end of the day, we have talked many times on how Charlton Heston has such a weird affect.
Mm-hmm.
in the way he speaks. Are we
Mhm.
sure that he wasn't just imitating Charlton Heston?
Yeah, that might be. And if so, kudos to you, sir.
Good
I
job,
just
Tom
love that
Felton.
they're also like his character. What is the motivation for him being so absolutely cruel to these apes? And then they're like,
we needed a 10-minute backstory of him getting beaten by his father.
we also needed the movie to continue being cruel to him because it's like beating him to death was not enough. Let's electrocute this dude too. They really have some overkill in this film, Brad.
And it all makes sense within the confines of this movie. Like within the world of Planet of the Apes, I'm like, yeah, obviously he's gonna have a shock baton in one hand, and he's gonna get blasted with a freaking fire hose.
Did you catch the 2001 reference in that scene though? When
The Space
Caesar-
Odyssey?
Yeah, when Caesar first gets the baton and he holds it up in the air and there's a shot of just his hand holding it. It's like a direct reference to the beginning of 2001 where you see the ape with the bone.
I
was like, I see what you're doing. Clever movie.
Yeah. It is my favorite movie of all time, 2001.
Mine too, man.
We're all the space baby, Bob.
Brad, any final thoughts on the first part of this movie before we break for whiskey and then get into the real meat of the film in the back half?
Dude, this is a hell of a time kind of movie. You know what I mean? Like, I don't even want to give it a score. I just want to be like, oh, Rise of the Planet of the Apes, hell of a time. Go watch it.
I think that's a good place to leave this half because the first half of this movie is like, all right, I see what you're doing. Evil corporation, apes getting pissed off, James Franco trying to look pretty. I get it. And then it really kicks up a notch in the second half. So, Brad, let's press pause here. Let's fuel ourselves with some whiskey, and then we will kick it up a notch in the second half. What do you say?
Before we go there, I want to give credit for neighbor number 17 who gets just pooped on the entire movie. Actor named David Hewlett. So David Hewlett, thank you for sacrificing your dignity.
Thank you for being patient zero.
Let's drink this whiskey, Bob.
Hey, it's Kaylee Cuoco for Priceline. Ready to go to your happy place for a happy price? Well, why didn't you say so? Just download the Priceline app right now and save up to 60% on hotels. So whether it's Cousin Kevin's Kazoo Concert in Kansas City, go Kevin, or Becky's Bachelorette Bash in Bermuda, you never have to miss a trip ever again. So download the Priceline app today. Your savings are waiting.
Go to your happy place for a happy price. Go to your happy price, Priceline.
Host the ultimate backyard barbecue with Whole Foods Market. It's the hot grill summer event through July 16th with sizzling sales on no antibiotics ever boneless beef ribeye steak and beef New York strip steak. Plus, check out sales on sustainable wild-caught Alaska sockeye salmon, organic strawberries, and more. In a hurry? Choose grab-and-go favorites like picnic salads and sushi, plus plenty of cooler-friendly beverages. Make it a hot grill summer at Whole Foods Market.
All right, so today we are checking out Green River Foolproof Bourbon Whiskey. Brad, I'm a big fan of Green River.
Yes,
I
sir.
think even more specifically, I'm a big fan of their master distiller, Aaron Harris, our boy Aaron.
Mhm.
And because of that, anything that they send me, I'm going to be excited for. This bottle of whiskey literally just came out, 2 weeks ago, Brad? We are drinking it and recording this review on the first day of its official release, post-embargo. So we're 2 weeks
Sure are,
behind,
Bob.
but that might be a record for us, Brad. Only 2 weeks behind on a new release.
Yeah, 100%, Bob. We are the most up-to-date whiskey podcast in the world of whiskey podcasts. I don't know of anyone else who has better up-to-date news than us, Bob.
Now, as far as I can tell, this is a permanent addition to their lineup at Green River. It is a mash bill of 70% corn, 21% rye, 9% malted barley. Each batch of this foolproof is going to be kind of a varied proof. Now, Brad, this is something that, I don't want to get on my soapbox about. I still don't know if I've...
But I hear you clambering up there.
Well, I still don't know if I quite understand how companies use the term foolproof when they release foolproof whiskeys, because I have heard it defined 5 different ways. And I Googled it just before we pressed record tonight to make sure that the way that most people intend it is that it's not a barrel proof whiskey, but they'll proof it down to the entry proof when it went into the barrel. So like a lot of distillers, they'll put their stuff in the barrel at like 110 proof. So when it comes out of the barrel, they only knock it down to 110. They call it full proof. So it's basically a synonym for entry proof. However, I don't really understand what's going on with Green River then. Why is their full proof varied in the way that it's bottled? Like why from batch to batch is going to be a different proof? Do they put it in barrels at different proofs all the time? I have no idea. This particular one clocks in at 117.3 proof. And I'm reading this press release right now, Brad. Our friend Dan Calloway from Bardstown Bourbon Company, who also is the VP of development for Green River, he said this. This is a direct quote from Dan. Foolproof bottlings are custom blends of barrels selected from our favorite parts of the rickhouses, hand-selected for their quality. What I love about foolproof expressions is that you're in control of the proof. Taste at full-bodied strength and adjust to your preferences. Which doesn't seem to actually jibe with the definition that I read online. So it seems like you can kind of just call whatever you want foolproof. Now, I'm not accusing
Bob,
Green River of doing that, but like...
I was going to say, Bob, are you going to trust the capital I internet? Or are you going to trust friend of show Dan Calloway?
I guess what I'm saying is, at the end of the day, I don't really care, but this is a term that's not regulated. It has absolutely no meaning beyond what companies want it to mean. And that's cool with me, because as long as this is tasty, you can call it whatever the hell you want.
That was a really long way. We went all the way around the bend of the river and back, Bob, to get to the point. If this is tasty, you can call it whatever you want.
I don't usually get to nerd out about whiskey, and I know that you don't care about this terminology. So I'm really speaking into the void, and I'm hoping that someone out there is dialoguing with me as they listen to this.
I'm sure they are,
because
Bob.
it's not you.
Maybe they can call in to our non-existent phone line that we used to have and leave a voicemail.
All right, man, let's dive into the actual whiskey here. Dan Calloway, let us know what's going on with this, because I really like it, and I want to know more about it. Brad, what are you picking up on the nose of Green River Full Proof?
Yeah, man. I mean, this is a high rye bourbon. It's 70 corn, 21 rye, and the rest is malted barley, 9%. And the reason I bring up the mash bill here is that I was kind of blown away. I mean, 21% is high, but it's not like a massive rye bill. I got rye right on the nose. Once I let it sit for a little bit, though, this had strawberry Pop-Tart. It had peanut butter. It had all sorts of really nice notes. It's got a little bit of a skunky mint flavor coming on the nose. The one complaint I have here is that the ethanol comes across pretty strongly, and even after letting it sit for a while, it still is just coming off like 125 plus proofer. But I really like the notes going on here. I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10.
Yeah, it actually has a lot of character that we get on high-proof wheated bourbons. There's a lot of softness here. There's some Coca-Cola notes as well that I really like. So it's got a nice spice base to it. And every once in a while, I don't want to call it sharp because that makes it sound like it's something that's like, you know, you want to pull back from it. There's this pop of like a really bright fruit, like a sour apple or a lemon twist, or there's just something that's like really bright that pops off of it every now and then. I'm with you on that weird skunky note. I pushed through that and it kind of dissipated after about a minute in the glass. I like this a lot, and I don't know where it's going to go, and I think I'm really intrigued by it. I'm going to give it an 8.5 on the nose.
Bob, I'll tell you what, it goes to some delicious places. This is a 9 out of 10 on the palate. It's got peanut butter, it's got vanilla, it's got a really nice sweet mint coming off of that rye. It gets a little bit spicy near the back of my palate, but the big thing that hit me was that, as with a lot of ryes that I enjoy, it mixes that spice with the richness of a bourbon. And obviously this being a bourbon, the richness is forward. And for me, it came across as like a caramel fudge.
Oh,
like you get a little bit of that cacao to go with the caramel. Bob, this is freaking delicious.
Dude, I thought you were going to say what I was thinking, and you almost did. I'm with you. This is far and away the best thing I've had from Green River. And
easily,
as much as I support Aaron, I can now fully support everything that's coming out of this distillery product-wise, too, because right up front, there was that kind of tart strawberry that you were picking up, Brad. It was like, not quite strawberry shortcake, but it had a little bit of breadiness, but it was like fresh, tart strawberries. And then you start kicking it to the back of your palate. All those nice bourbon notes come in, some nice oak, underlying it, vanilla, caramel, maple. You go to swallow, and it's like waves of spice and heat come back up your palate. This is a big, bold bourbon, but what I loved about it is it never stopped being sweet. It was sweet all the way through, and it never soured, and it never got bitter. And it's really viscous. It's really thick on the palate. And when you go to swallow, it reminded me of eating like a caramel flan. Like when you cut into, if you've ever had flan,
dude.
It had that kind of dairy, like a thickness to it. Man, I love this. This is fantastic. 9.5 for me, Brad.
Yeah, dude, I told you, man, the palate on this is incredible. The finish drops off just a little bit for me. It's not quite as potent. It's a medium finish in my book. But you get the dill coming through. It goes from that sweet mint on the palate to kind of a dill flavor on the back end. There's some black pepper. It almost reminded me of like a fresh cut grass bit of a flavor here. Just falls off a tiny bit. Still a really solid product through the finish. I'll give it a 7.5 here.
You ever have like a Coke bottle in your car that you leave in there for a little too long during the day and it gets kind of like warm and flat? And you're like, nope. I'm gonna finish it. All right, well, that's what I did today. I had a bottle of Diet Coke in my car, went to a baseball game, got back in the car, and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna finish those last few sips. My point is, flat Coca-Cola tastes a little bit different than fully carbonated Coca-Cola.
Doesn't quite hit the same.
This had those notes. Like all the Coca-Cola notes are there, but it's a little bit thinner. It's a little bit more like corn syrupy. And then there's that layer of herbal fresh cut grass you were getting too. Like I'm with you, man. You're spot on today. The finish is a step down, but it's not like a drastic step down. It's at least a 7.5, I think, Brad.
Yeah, and I think balance wise, this is a solid 8 out of 10. The strong palate definitely helps it here. The nose is really good. The finish is decent, above average. But the main thing with the balance here is that they know what they are going for and they hit the right notes throughout.
I will say this. This is not the most complex whiskey we've had this season. And we're coming off of back-to-back weeks of like really great whiskeys. Barrel Vantage at like an $80 to $90 price point. Bardstown Amrut at $160. This, not to tip too far into value, this is $49.99 SRP. So now we've had 3 phenomenal whiskeys at 3 price points. I say all that to say, it's not the most complex. It definitely tastes like a $49 whiskey instead of a $90 whiskey. It is the most purely delicious of all 3 of those whiskeys. Like I could get drunk sitting here drinking this right now because I want more of it immediately. It is hitting all of the Bob Book taste bud pleasure receptors that I have been craving in a whiskey all season. And like, I am the target audience for this. This is a 9 out of 10 balance, Brad.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, dude, it kind of fits Rise of the Planet of the Apes. Like, it's just a hell of a good time, if not like the most complex French cinema deep dive that you might want on certain days. But you could put this in any day of the week and enjoy it. I'm kind of with you, man. Dude, value-wise, $50 for this? Yeah. I thought it was going to be like $70. Like, no joke. I was like looking for it online thinking like, this will probably be like a $70 bottle. This is $49.99, Bob. That is a incredible value in the world of whiskey. 9 out of 10.
I'm going to give it a 9.5. And the only reason it's not a 10 is I think about other things at this proof point that are kind of in, within a margin of error of $5 to $10. And I can really only think of like Rare Breed and Rebel Distillers Collection, which is maybe my favorite whiskey.
Sure.
That's like $43, $45. And this actually reminds me of that a lot on the taste, but it's creamier. And so I'm like, this is interchangeable with that for me now, but it's about $10 more expensive, at least 6 or 7. And so it's like, it's not quite a 10, but it's darn close, Brad. And it's bringing me out to my highest score of the season on a whiskey, a 44 out of 50.
Ooh. I am just a little bit lower than you, Bob, but I'm at a 41.5 out of 50.
Well, Brad, this makes it 3 weeks in a row that we have finally achieved some whiskeys over the 40 mark, because we're coming out to a 42.75 or an 85.5 out of 100. Folks, this is like, again, Green River, please hear me when I say this. I've liked all your products. I've probably hyped up my boy a little bit. This is the first one that I'm like, absolutely not. Like this is a no-brainer. Go purchase this candidate for like whiskey of the year for me, especially when you consider value as part of it. You could buy 3.5 bottles of this for 1 bottle of the Bardstown Amrut.
Mm-hmm.
It's good enough that you might want to buy 3.5 bottles of it.
Yes. Yeah, Bob, I am blown away by this. I knew that they were doing good things at Green River, and this has just cemented them in my mind as one of the top distilleries to be watching right now.
Mm-hmm.
I absolutely love this foolproof.
Yeah. So much so that it's like, this should be like the basic expression. Nothing against like what they've put out so far, but it's like, hey guys, what if you pivoted your entire strategy and you're just like, no, this is Green River bourbon now. Because then
everybody buy this.
Because then I might even come down off of my Rebel Lux Row high horse and just start touting Green River. It's that good, Brad.
It's incredible. I'm with you, man. Spectacular whiskey.
All right, dude. Let's get back into talking about Planet of the Apes. What do you say?
Bob.
Rise of the Planet of the Apes.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, let's get to it, man. All right, everybody. That was Green River Foolproof. Ugh. Heaven.
I'm ready to give this movie a 10 now, good. Brad. I don't even care anymore. This has lifted my whole week.
I'll give this 10.
You know, the thing is, like, we've had some really great whiskeys. The Barrel Vantage and the Amrut were just really great. And it's
so good.
It's kind of like watching movies where you walk out of a movie and you're like, wow, that was an exceptionally made film that I will probably give like a 9 out of 10 to, but it does not hit me in the heart the way that my favorites do. And this is like, Brad, this is like a big old warm hug from Steven Spielberg. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, Oof. It really is, man. I just, thank you, Aaron Harris. Thank you, Green River Distilling. This is so good.
All right, let's pivot reluctantly into our game for the day, which we call 2 Facts and a Falsehood.
Brad is gonna try to stump you, Bob, to all right and what is wrong. 2 facts and a falsehood.
2 Facts and a Falsehood is the part of the show where Brad presents me with 3 items about the making of this movie. All of them are presented as fact. One of them is a complete lie. Brad, as of right now, I am at 14-9 on the season. Still looking to wrap up that 500 season. I hope I can get back in the win column today. But let's see if you can derail me yet again, Brad, with your 2 facts and a falsehood.
Fact number 1, this is one of the first films to use motion capture in an on-location setting. Previously, mocap was only limited to special studio setups with special mocap cameras and very clearly defined surroundings. Fact number 2, the only scenes of Caesar that Andy Serkis did not perform was when he was a baby, because he was too large to appear where the baby ape does. Instead, the baby chimp was animated using a real newborn for reference in order to make the typical jittery movements of a baby look realistic. Fact number 3, this is the first film in the Planet of the Apes franchise not to have an appearance from Charlton Heston in it after his death in 2008.
Can you reread number 1 real quick?
One of the first films to use motion capture in an on-location setting.
So not the first, just one of the first?
One of the first.
One of the first. I was going to call you out for that one if it just said the first, because I was like, I don't think that's true. Okay, so I think it's either 1 or 3. Mocap is such an interesting thing because, like, yes, it was mostly done on a soundstage. I think back to, like, watching behind-the-scenes clips of Tom Hanks doing the Polar Express, which is hilarious because, like, those animated people look dead. Like, why did you do mocap? Like, it clearly did not serve its intended purpose. Was Charlton Heston in every Apes movie? That's the thing is, like, I haven't seen any of the sequels to the original. And there were 5 of them, 5 movies total. So that's 4 movies I've never seen. I know he was in at least one of them, but I don't know if he even makes an appearance in the other 3. I'm going to go out on a limb and say 3 is the Falsehood, but it could just as easily be 1, Brad. But I'm going to lock in 3 as my answer.
Bob, you are one step closer to a perfect half season. You are correct. Here's the wild thing. Charlton Heston does show up in this movie.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he does. There's a scene where, do you remember when Tom Felton brings the girlfriends to the shelter?
Yeah.
There's a movie showing on the television screen above them, and it's the 1965 drama The Agony and the Ecstasy with Charlton Heston.
So he's there in spirit.
He's literally there in a movie within a movie.
Well, I mean, he was dead at the time, is what I'm saying. Like,
yeah, but he's in the movie, Bob.
He is.
In a movie. It's Inception.
He sure is. Okay, cool. So, do you know if he was also in all of the other ones, too?
He was not.
Oh, okay.
He did make an appearance. I'm trying to remember now. He's in most of them. I think there's maybe like 2 that he is completely not in.
He was like, you're not getting me back for Apes 4. I need to go do other stuff now. All right, dude, let's talk about the second half of this movie. So things really take off when Caesar decides, like, I'm tired of Tom Felton's shit. It's time for me to start beating up some humans and taking control over this guy, Koba. And you get this really great kind of jailbreak sequence, but you get to watch Caesar be... I don't know what the word is, man. And this is like what makes Serkis's performance so good is Caesar's kind of dangerous. And you're not entirely sure if you're on his side the whole time. Like, you trust that he has a moral compass more than these other apes do. But when you're watching him kind of be devious and devise a plan to break out, you're not entirely sure where he's going to go with it. And so you're kind of wondering, like, is Caesar going to turn bad? And he always just kind of pulls himself back from that edge throughout the film. But watching him kind of figure out, okay, here's the passcode to the gate. Here's how I get the gorilla out of its cage. Here's how I get Koba on my side. And then finally, like, here's how we bust out of the joint. It's a really, really great sequence that's done essentially wordlessly because none of the apes speak at that point. And I just think it's another testament to how good Andy Serkis is in this movie.
100%, man. And even, like, one of the most jarring moments of the film for me is when he lures the ape that had made a fool of him at the start of his time in the shelter out. Mm-hmm. And it kind of is following this other ape walking through the, like, ventilation grating.
Yeah.
Oh, dude, when he comes out and gets freaking clocked by Caesar.
You know what? I keep calling him Koba. That's not Koba. Koba's the one that's getting effed up in Genesis.
Oh, yeah. He's the one that's, like, been a lab ape for a long time.
Have you seen the second one, Brad?
I have not.
Okay, so the second one in this trilogy is by far the best one. Okay. But Koba is like the main bad guy in that movie.
I was going to say, like, the moment he comes on screen, you're like, bad guy, bad guy, that's the bad guy.
To the point where you're like, why did they choose him for this experiment? Like, it seems like if literally anything goes wrong, this guy's going to rip your face off.
Yes, 100%, man. Another fun fact I learned in my research, he is a bonobo ape. Mm-hmm. Well, I guess bonobo is its own species within
the
kingdom. Koba, yes.
Okay.
And he is the only species of monkey to not have appeared in a Planet of the Apes film before, because bonobos they used to be thought to be a subspecies of chimp, but they're actually their own. And so this is the first time a bonobo was in the films.
And they made him like the most
him.
evil serial killer ape of all time.
Dude, he's terrifying.
Oh, you got to watch the second one, dude. It's so good. So anyway, yeah, Caesar busts them all out of the joint. You go back to Genesis and there's a bunch of BS happening. Once the stuff with Caesar really gets going, I kind of hated every time they cut away to like James Franco being like, please let me come do more experiments. I think I can change. I don't care about you anymore, James Franco. Like, let's watch Caesar do stuff. And at no point did they kind of get the Gen Cis stuff under control for me. I feel like after a certain point, it was like, this is a Benny Hill theme. Like, let's just speed this up and watch the calamities happen. Because it's just like one gigantic OSHA violation happening for an hour in that place. Like my guy's leaving doors open. There's apes running around. We're shooting things. He's coughing blood on everybody. We're just lifting products out of the lab. No one's paying attention. Like, this place has the most lax security, quality control, PPE requirements. Like, now that we've come through COVID, I'm watching this man wander the streets just coughing on unsuspecting bystanders. It's like, you don't wear a mask when you're sick, dude? What are you doing? Unbelievable.
Bro. The fact that you want him walking around wearing a mask. Like, have you ever seen a human being pre-pandemic wearing a mask, walking around?
That's the
in
thing,
public?
is like they're wearing masks and stuff and protective equipment when they're with the monkeys, and then the man's like, he knows he got sick from the monkeys, and he's like, yeah, I'm good to just wander around and just cough blood on everybody. I think we're good now.
He was going over the scientist's house for unknown reasons.
Yeah. Like, hey, this guy will tell me what's wrong with me. Let me go over and cough on his door and neighbors. So then you get, I think, what really redeems the movie. I don't even want to say redeems the movie. It was like a 7.5, and it was starting to tip down into like 7 to 6.5 range because the people in the film start to become even more one-dimensional in order to serve the plot. And I was like, oh man, this is getting kind of sloppy. And then they're like, let's have a big action set piece on the Golden Gate Bridge to end this movie. And
dude.
Boy, oh boy, are the last 20 to 25 minutes of this film not just absolutely perfect action filmmaking.
Dude, it is stunning how awesome the end of this movie is. And especially as you see, Andy Serkis, Caesar, like, take full ownership of his new leadership role. Like, he's finally stepping into who we wanted him to be the entire time. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the success of this movie, not to get away from the set piece, but the success of this movie is that you want Caesar to have an uprising with the apes by the end of the film. Like, as a viewer, you're like, yeah, I don't know if humans really deserve this planet. Let's give the monkeys a shot. Why not? And you get to see them take their first shot on the Golden Gate Bridge, and it's wild. Like, the fog rolls in, there's monkeys climbing up the girders, they're underneath the bridge, they're riding on horses. Like, I don't know what else you want out of a set piece on the Golden Gate Bridge, Bob.
And it's so great too, because everything they make the apes do at the end of the movie is like, okay, come on now. But they've been injected with superhero venom or whatever the hell you want to call it. And like, by
Steve Rogers venom.
Yeah, by the end of the movie, they are like superhuman smart. So it makes total sense that Caesar knows they're waiting for me in that fog somewhere. Let's go over them and let's go under them. And I'm like, hell yeah, the master tactician. Caesar apparently absorbed both human intelligence and Sun Tzu's The Art of War while he was breathing in this stuff. And it just
very quickly.
You know what? I don't care. It's great. They turn over a bus. They're using it as a shield. It's just like everything I want this movie to be. And I kind of forgot that there is a big action set piece. I really thought this movie was just kind of like, let's set up the Caesar arc. He goes into the trees at the end. And man, I forgot that there's like apes getting machine gunned and a gorilla jumping in a helicopter and like ripping guys' faces apart. It's just absolutely thrilling, Brad.
It's incredible. Everything about it, man. I am all about this movie. I remember walking out of the theaters the first time I saw it and being like, man, I remember watching Planet of the Apes with my dad, and it was not this cool.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it was a fun movie, but it was not nearly as cool as this one. And a large portion of that is the final set piece, and it's that final moment. Like, James Franco gives one last plea, and you've gone from, like, Franco doesn't even need to ask Caesar to be at home because he's so committed to it, to I'm not going to come home because I'm angry and bitter, to I'm not going to go with you because I have found my home with the civilization I belong with. And like, it's just such a cool transformation of character. And it's really so well done.
It's really great how they use Caesar's ability to talk at the end of the film. He only speaks 3 times in this movie. The first time is when he yells no, and everyone's like, oh, shit. The second time is when he yells no on the bridge to keep the gorilla from killing someone. And then the third time is when you understand that he can actually form full sentences, and he reveals it to Franco, whispering in his ear, Caesar is home. And I think that's Franco's best moment of acting in the whole movie, is reacting to that. The horror, the pride, the like, I can't believe we're here, like kind of moment. But then they couple that with some really brilliant nonverbal moments of Franco needing a hand up from Caesar. And so where Caesar had reached out to him to like in a subservient way earlier in the movie, now it's Franco needing a hand up from Caesar. And then once Franco's like, hey, go be Caesar now, he walks away and all the other apes start kowtowing to him like it's the end of The Godfather. Like he's freaking Michael Corleone now. It's so good, dude. Like everything they choose to do in that final confrontation, send off with Franco, both verbally and non-verbally, it's all payoff and it's really well earned.
Yes. Like, yes. The final, 30 minutes of this movie, Bob, are like 9 out of 10 action, drama, like movement into satisfying everything they've set up throughout the rest of the film. I got to give my guy Rupert Wyatt some credit here. I've never heard of him before, and he freaking delivers.
All right, man. Well, in order to give this movie some final scores, we have one more segment to get through, and that is Let's Make It a Double.
We're near the end of the episode, so thanks for listening to the Film and Whiskey Show. Let's pair another film with this one, even if it's a struggle. It's our final segment of the day, now let's make it a double.
Let's Make It a Double is the part of the show where we pick a movie to pair up with this one to make the perfect double feature. Brad, I mentioned Jurassic Park earlier. I think that's kind of like the closest parallel to what's going on in this movie, although it makes reference to a ton of other things, like 2001. There's like a little bit of, I don't know if you ever read the short story Flowers for Algernon when you were like in high school.
I did not.
There's a little bit of that happening in the Alzheimer's story. I think Jurassic Park's the closest thing. I am not going to pair this up with Jurassic Park because that's unfair to this movie. I am going to pair it up with Jurassic World, which kicked off a franchise that I absolutely hate. And this movie is significantly better than Jurassic World. And so I would pair them up as 2 ways to jump off, to use Jurassic Park as the jumping off point. And one of them worked out really well, and one of them led to 3 crappy movies. So there you go.
I don't think I love that, Bob. I was thinking about Jurassic World the other day because The Legend of Zelda is a movie that is a game franchise that's now being turned into a movie. And the writer for the Jurassic World series is the writer for The Legend of Zelda, and that does not...
Yeah, that's rough.
Yeah. What do you think about Wes Ball as a director?
I don't even know who Wes Ball is, if I'm being honest with you.
Yeah. He did Maze Runner and...
Yeah, I didn't see that. Dude, there was like such a glut of mediocre YA novel adaptations in the 2010s that I was like,
Mm-hmm.
I can only see Hunger Games because I know those are going to be the best of the bunch. I never saw the Divergent stuff. I never saw the Maze Runner stuff. Never saw Twilight.
Yeah, so if we're diving in, the first of the Divergent movies I really liked. If I went back to it, I'm sure it would be like a 7. But like it was decent, but it got so bad that like they canned it after the second one.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Other than that, I don't think I got into any of the offshoot. Like, yeah, I never watched Maze Runner.
Anyway,
yeah.
let's make it a double, man.
Let's make it a double. I finished watching a movie that you begged for me to see in theaters. I mean, you like, despite the fact that we never see each other, you were pretty much on your knees begging me to see this movie in theaters. I did not see it in theaters. I just finished it like an hour and a half ago.
Oh.
It was a little film called Oppenheimer.
Oh, a film known for its many apes.
Yes, so many apes. The reason it makes me think of Rise of the Planet of the Apes is that, well, should I spoil Oppenheimer? That's actually a new film.
I mean, I don't really know if it's a spoiler. It's like a historical document.
Sure.
Spoiler alert. America
that
dropped
comes
some
out of
bombs.
Hollywood. Let's just say this: there's a chain reaction in both films, and I'll go with that. Go watch Oppenheimer is my primary thought.
Dude,
it's
such
like
a good movie.
I need to see it again. I don't know if it's 10 out of 10, but it's definitely Nolan's best film.
I saw it 5 or 6 times in the theater, Brad. And there's only a select few films I've ever seen that many times in the movie theater.
That's a lot of times, Bob.
The first time I saw Oppenheimer, I was like, this is a big, kind of flawed, enormous tapestry of a movie that I can't quite get my arms around and is unbelievable. And then I saw it a second time and I was like, I think this is the angle he wants to take. The third time I was like, all right, I really think it's this angle. And the more I watch it, the more I'm like, now I know why every scene in this movie happens. I know the angle he's trying to take. It took me like 4 viewings to get there, but it was never like I have to watch this 4 times because it's like it's not a well-made film. You know what I mean? Like it was obstructing itself from me. It's just so freaking good. Watch Oppenheimer even more than you should watch Rise of the Planet of the Apes is what I'm saying.
Yes. Yeah. I am 100% with you, Bob. Oppenheimer's an incredible film. Rise of the Planet of the Apes, though. We might as well get into our final scores.
I was going to say, with that said, man, this is not anything to sneeze at. This is a really good movie, Brad.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of fun. I think that there's a little bit of cheesy acting, but this is a rare case where I think the cheesy acting kind of works in the movie's favor. Mm-hmm. Am I wrong?
No, and like, you know, if we're talking about this as like an origin story for this character of Caesar, this is happening during what we would now call phase 1 of the MCU, because next week, spoiler alert people, we're watching The Avengers, where it all culminates. And like, I really like the origin stories of those original Avengers people, but as the MCU goes on, the origin story started to really suck because it was just this person has this beam of something shot at them and now they're Captain Marvel or whatever the hell happened. You know what I mean? And like, this has so much more heart. This has so much more character development. There's really thorny kind of moral questions happening. And I think that, is it a perfect movie? No, but it does scene setting for a trilogy so much better than pretty much anything we've gotten in the last 14 years or however long it's been since it came out. It's just a really good entry point into this new world they're building.
Yeah, and the fascinating thing for me coming to the end of this episode is we have been bemoaning IP-driven films for like over a decade now. Mm-hmm. But look at this, man. This is a 10+ like expanded universe. There are so many Planet of the Apes films. And yet here we are like saying this trilogy, great trilogy. All 3 were really good movies. Mm-hmm. The new one getting good reviews.
Yep.
Like apparently you can do long-term over 60 years at this point. IP-driven franchise and continue to do it at a, high-quality pace.
Who'da thunk it, bro? And you don't have to destroy cinema to do it.
No, you sure don't.
All right, man. I would say this. There are parts of this movie that are like really weak and really thinly constructed.
No.
But they really paper over it with that last 20 minutes. It's like a 7.5 movie that gives you an 8.5 theater going experience. Like, I walked out of this movie, even today, watching it like on my phone. I was like, hell yes, this movie got me going. I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10, but I think like you could easily convince me to bump up to an 8.5 on this one.
Yeah, I'm in the same place, Bob. I think this is an 8 out of 10. I really like this movie. I have fun with it. I will come back to it.
Oh, here, let me ask this. I'm looking at our scores for the season, Brad. And like, 8 or 9 weeks ago now, we did the first Pirates of the Caribbean film. Okay, setting the stage for a long-running franchise.
Mm-hmm.
How does this compare to that movie? Because that one shook out to an 8.75 on average. I gave it the same score. I gave them both 8s. You gave that one a 9.5. So, like,
ooh.
In retrospect, were you too high on Pirates? Are you too low on this movie? And, like, what's the difference between them?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I think Pirates is a better movie.
Mm-hmm.
Just like structurally, I think that there's more going on in Pirates. Maybe this is an 8.5.
There you go. I think I talked myself into it too. I'm changing it. It's an 8.5.
All right, 8.5.
Yeah, there we go. I accidentally just typed in 85 into our Excel spreadsheet, and the average score on this movie was bananas.
You are getting very high on this movie.
/ the Green River Foolproof. All right, so that is it for us today. It is an 8.5 on average. I want to say thank you so much for choosing this as our listener pick for the season. I really enjoyed it. I haven't gone back and watched it, I think, since it came out, Brad. So this was a really enjoyable revisit for us.
Yeah, 100%, man. This was a surprise breath of fresh air in what I thought was going to be like the start of the end.
Mm-hmm.
So, big fan.
All right, so next week, as I said, 2012, Joss Whedon's The Avengers. I'm really pumped. That's a good movie, and I haven't watched it in a long time. It might rekindle some hope in the MCU before I rewatch it all go to hell again in chronological order. But before you join us for that, you can reach out to us about Rise of the Planet of the Apes. What do you think of this film? Which is the best one in this trilogy? Do you agree with me that it's the second one? Or am I crazy? Let us know on all of our social medias, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, @FilmWhiskey.
Or you can jump onto the Discord. We are on there every single day talking to you guys, fans of the Film Whiskey podcast. So if you'd like to join the conversation, you can find a link to our Discord server at the end of every single one of our show notes.
Join us next week for The Avengers. But until then, I'm Bob Book.
I'm Brad G.
And we'll see you next time. Holy shit, this was good. Oh my gosh, I was not expecting
I knew you were
much.
going to like it. I knew you were going to like it.
Dude, you know my palate is just like the whiskey equivalent of a 5-year-old. Like, I just want a waffle with maple syrup on it.